You're listening to the Rent Roll Radio Show with Sterling Chapman. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined by Sarah Weaver with Aria Design. Sarah is a coach and investor and a badass retreat host. Sarah, thank you so much for joining the show, and it's great to see you again.
Thanks, Sterling. Yeah, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Sarah, can you give our listeners a little bit of your background, where you came from, what you did before real estate, how you got into real estate, what you're doing today?
Absolutely. So I am a nomadic investor. I have been living out of my suitcase for 3 years and 3 months now. And so I'm typically abroad traveling the world. And as of lately, I have been buying up small multifamilies in the Midwest, like Omaha, Des Moines, Kansas City. And I'm turning a lot of my units into furnished rentals. Not only is it a very hot and sexy topic, but it's also really great for cash flow. And so that's what my investing life looks like. Prior to real estate, I should say prior to being an investor, I was also in real estate. I have been working with real estate agents for the last 7 years, helping them grow their team or grow their business. And now I'm determined to help them grow their portfolio. And so I coach real estate agents, both one-on-one and group coaching.
Awesome. Where are you from?
Originally, Kansas City.
Kansas City. So how did you get into coaching real estate agents in the beginning?
I found the job on Craigslist.
Nice. What was the posting on Craigslist that you responded to?
Yeah, this was back in 2015, and I was determined to work remotely. That was way before COVID, way before it became really accessible to a lot of people. And I just knew that it was something that I needed for my lifestyle. And so I applied to get this 83 jobs back in 2015. And I had a spreadsheet. There was no way for me to even keep them straight. And so I was applying to jobs that were posted in like Chicago, LA, San Francisco, even though I was living in Austin, Texas. And I think that the title was virtual interviewer because it was a recruiting company or a staffing agency that helped real estate agents add administrative staff.
Okay. And how did you like that?
I loved it until about the 1000th interview. And then I was like, I don't want to interview another human again. And thankfully the company recognized, hey, Sarah Weaver could sell ice to an Eskimo. Why do we have her interviewing assistants when we should have her out in front of real estate agents selling our services? And then thankfully that's exactly what I did.
Awesome. And then how did that transition? And I feel you in interviewing. I can't stand it. I have hired and interviewed so many people for corporate America. I fell asleep during an interview one time that I was conducting.
that you probably made that poor girl or guy go home and cry.
It was a Zoom interview. I might have not gotten caught. I don't know.
That is really bad.
It was before COVID, but it was remote. I was in Baton Rouge hiring somebody in DC.
You should issue a public apology to that person.
If you're out there, I'm sorry. I ended up hiring them. So does it really matter? Like, they got the job. So how did you transition from selling the service to buying real estate?
Absolutely. So I bought my first rental while I had that job. I was living in Denver, Colorado. So I started in Austin, moved to Denver, was living in Denver, working remotely for this company. I could live anywhere in the world, and I chose Denver, Colorado. And I knew that I wanted to own real estate. And I wish I could tell you this beautiful story of why, but it was honestly a trickle.
How did you know that? How'd you know that? And how old were you? Because I didn't even find out until I was like 30 that owning real estate was cool.
So I knew I wanted to buy a house when I was 25 because I knew someone that I didn't know the term for it, but I knew she did what I now call live-in flips. So she would move into a house, fix it up, and then sell it. And then she got savvy and she started doing that, but then she would rent it out. And she was in Austin, Texas. So appreciation was also on her side in addition to cash flow. And I thought, holy cow, I should do that. And so I started looking at property probably, yeah, right at 25. And this just didn't have the information at my fingertips or the money. But more importantly, I was so focused on traveling. And so a lot of people, especially in the real estate investor community, are always saying, oh, I wish I had bought sooner. I wish, I wish. Honestly, I can say with confidence, my 20s were so freaking fun that I'm glad that it happened the way that it did. And I think the investors that live in the, oh, I wish I had, they're also going to continue to move into the future with that mindset and that frame that it's going to trip them up moving forward. And so instead, I look back, I'm like, guys, my 20s were so freaking fun. I traveled to like almost 32 countries in 9 years and I had a blast. And then I bought a rental property and realized the power of real estate and cash flow. But no regrets on not doing it faster.
Awesome. Love hearing that. And what do you spend most of your time doing today?
Today, I'm doing a lot of coaching. So today in particular, I have agent coaching clients who I meet with every week. I have about 10 that meet with me regularly. They're my 10 coaching slots. I had 2 of those calls this morning. And then I also opened myself up to one-on-one coaching with real estate investors. And then really excited to announce that I also launched group coaching. And so had my first meeting with my spring cohort yesterday, and they are all investors that are committed to buying their next rental property as not as quickly as possible because we want to buy really good deals, but they know that they're going to buy something in the next 180 days.
So what do you coach them to do? How are they going to buy these properties?
Yeah, there's a lot of mindset. We talked a little bit before the interview. I think that mindset and a mindset shift is needed for a lot of people, especially with how frustrating the market's been. We're writing a lot of offers. We're getting beat out a lot. And it can really put you in a bad place mentally. And so there's a lot of mindset work that I get to do, a lot of limiting beliefs that I help them fight through and erase. And then I help them take action. So I have essentially a framework. It's like a 7-step framework to buying your next property. Most of these are real estate agents who want to invest, not all of them, but most of them. And they all live somewhere where it's a little bit hard to make the cash flow numbers work. So I focus a lot on out-of-state investing, which is kind of what I've been doing.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's huge. My best friend lives in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and he's like, dude, I'd love to do what you're doing, but the houses here are like $600,000 for 3-2 that rent, you know what I mean? And you hear a lot about that in California and New York. So no, that's huge. Are you coaching them to buy like a long-term rental? That's what you're going after, is buying cash flow and long-term rentals. And then are we like putting, I got something on my finger. Are you, I was rubbing something. I was changing dates on my dry erase board earlier.
They make erasers. You don't have to use your fingers.
It was on the other side of the office. I didn't feel like walking over there, so I did that number.
Nice.
And then are we making on-market offers? Are we pulling the MLS and making offers, or do y'all talk about it? Because I don't buy anything on market. You know, mine's all off-market strategy. I'm just wondering kind of where your training lies there.
Absolutely. So your first question about long-term rental, everyone's strategy is a little bit different in the group. Some people have 50,000 in capital. Some of them have, 5 million in capital. It's a huge range. And so their strategy is going to be a little bit different. Some of them are interested in short-term rentals, which I help them with. A lot of them are interested in this medium-term rental strategy that I'm doing. And then most of them, or a majority of them from there, are looking at long-term. I do have one interested in mobile home parks. I have another interested in syndications, and I have one flipper. And so I can help anyone with all these different strategies. But for the most part, I would say that we're all looking at least a long-term hold So a buy and hold strategy. And then if they're doing short-term, medium-term, long-term, I can help with all of that.
So how are your properties managed?
I am still self-managing.
Ooh. How many are you self-managing?
So I just closed 5 days ago. I closed on my 17th door. And in 2 days, I'm closing on another duplex, and that will be my 19th door.
And you're self-managing from afar, the long term, the medium term, and the short term.
All of it.
How is that?
It's stressful. So let me tell your audience, I don't recommend it.
You're at the breaking point. So I quit managing my own properties at 18. I managed the first 18, and then I had a complete mental breakdown at 18, and I just gave it all away, and I'll never manage another property. I mean, under no circumstance.
So what I'm doing is it's probably a Band-Aid, but for your listeners, I want full transparency on what I'm going through. And I have hired a virtual assistant, and she is going to be my buffer between me and securing leases for my medium-term rentals, because most of them come renew every 3 months. And it's very easy, but it's time consuming.
Sure.
And so I'm going to have my virtual assistant do that moving forward. For my long-term rental that comes vacant this summer, I have identified boots on the ground to help me, and I will just pay. They're an investor, and I will pay them to do tenant placement. I will continue to manage for now.
How much are you paying for tenant placement?
We have not negotiated it. So I have done it in the past where I've paid per showing, and then I handled the actual nonsense from there. But in this case, I want her to take ownership and handle all of it. And so she probably isn't going to listen to this podcast. So hopefully she'll accept 50% of first month
I would like
rent.
to assume everybody's going to listen to this podcast.
All right. In that case, Allison, I am putting my foot down. I will pay you 50% of first 50%. Month's rent.
I pay 50%. There we go. So I've seen, I'm on my second property manager, and my first one didn't charge anything for tenant placement, but they charged 10% a month to manage. And my current one charges 50% tenant placement, but they only charge 6% to manage. So if you do the math on if they stay more than a year, I'm coming out ahead that way, But I've seen people take 100% on the tenant placement. I think 50% is good. I mean, it really boils down to the area, and it boils down to the area, and it also boils down to your criteria, right? Because you could find a tenant. I could find a tenant in a day, but am I gonna sit there and I'm gonna background check them and find the right tenant and turn down 6 tenants and show another 20 to get the right tenant? Because and sometimes that's worth it. You know what I mean? So I guess that probably factors into how much you're going to end up paying as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to say that I self-manage because quitting my W-2 was a priority, and replacing my income was of the utmost priority last year. And so in order for me to do that faster, I self-managed. Whereas if you're a listener and you have a high-paying, high net worth job, do not self-manage. It is not worth your time. Pay a professional to do that. Good luck finding a great property manager, and focus on your skill set. So now my skill set is finding great deals and acquiring capital. And so I should not be self-managing moving forward, and I won't. It's just taken a little bit. Even we talked about mindset. I have some scarcity mindset around money, and it's hard to pay someone sometimes.
So I feel good having this conversation because I haven't quit my day job yet. I should have, but I haven't because of the same fears and stuff. But I will say this about giving up my property management. Now it's never run quite as smooth as when I did it. At least on the leasing side. Let me say that. I was terrible at maintenance. I can't fix anything. And you know what I mean? I don't even know who to call at the time. But I'll tell you that I was at 98 or 99% occupancy because I mean, it was my stuff, and I was meeting the tenant at 7 o'clock at night on a Friday, and man, I was, salesman was coming out. We're getting this lease signed. Nobody cares like that. And so occupancy has not been the same when I manage. But what I will say is that, like, I said 18 was, I effectively managed 18 units, and then I bought a package that got me to 26 units, and that's kind of when the shit hit the fan. But if I would not have turned, and I couldn't give it up, because I was calculating how much money I was going to be losing paying this property manager. And then, not only how much I'm physically paying them, but like factor in the higher occupant, the lower occupancy and all that. Like, I could not handle it. However, if I hadn't given it up, I'd still have 26 units. And
yes. And how many do you have now?
Well, now I have 70 plus in my personal portfolio. I have a 70-unit apartment complex and a 54-unit apartment complex. I wouldn't have any of that. I'd still be like banging my head against the wall on those 26 units. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Saving $3,000 a month,
Yes. So I love what you said. You were calculating the money that you would lose, but what you weren't calculating was all the mind space that you got back, the time. Often it's actually the mind space that's the problem.
It's bandwidth. People don't, and we talk about this with my day job, because it doesn't require a lot of time, but it requires bandwidth. It requires, people always talk about, I only have so much time in the day. Man, people are getting a lot of shit done with the amount of time in the day. What you need to manage is your bandwidth. You know what I mean? Like, every decision you make is one less decision you can make, like outsource as much as you possibly can. I love what you said earlier about, I need to spend my time finding great deals and sourcing capital. I've had that conversation 100 times. I was having it with somebody last night, and I was like, we were talking about me hiring more people and outsourcing more things. And I was like, really, all I need to spend my time doing is sourcing good deals and talking to investors, because I don't really, like, a lot of the deal sourcing comes from the relationships, and I just can't outsource that, right? Like, if I have my assistant call somebody that like I have a good relationship with, they're gonna be like, dude, what the hell? Sterling can't even like talk to me anymore. He's got his freaking assistant calling me. So like, I can't outsource that, right? Or the investor who's gonna give me $250,000. Like, I don't want to risk somebody I'm paying $12 an hour to.
Well, also, do you enjoy that? Like, do you enjoy the relationship piece?
Exactly. That is another part, is like that energy. I can have investor conversations and find deals all day long. I can do it 18 hours a day and never get tired. What slows me down and makes me sluggish and gets my eyes crossed is staring at spreadsheets and filling out forms, and what I mean, doing or sitting on the phone with energy, or like,
yeah. I'm going to tell you this great phrase that I heard just this morning. I'm here at a co-working space in Des Moines, Iowa, which is where I just closed on a property. And I met this guy, and he creates games. He creates video games for a living. And when he talked about it, even his posture changed, like his whole face lit up. He's a big dude with a big beard. And he was like, oh yeah, I love it. And I was asking him all these questions about games, because remember, I'm a good interviewer, so I can ask good questions. Yeah. And I said, that sounds so fun. Like, is it fun? And he goes, you know what I love about my job is that the work doesn't feel worky. And it really stopped me. And I thought, I feel the same way. Like, today is one of those days where I'm on back-to-back calls all day. And do I want 5 days a week like this? I don't. But the work doesn't feel worky. I freaking love my clients. Like, one of them had a huge win yesterday. She went under contract on her first out-of-state investment because she followed my system, and she is a woman of action. And celebrating her and her wins, like that makes everything worth it. Like, I love what I do for a living.
Yeah, no, that's great. I had that conversation too when I talk about retiring. My wife said, well, what would you do if you retired? I'm like, probably the exact same thing. I'd probably just keep buying houses and apartment buildings, like, I mean, like, what would I do every day, I mean, so that's huge what do you enjoy doing, and what lights you up? What changes your posture? What makes you smile when you talk about it? That's huge.
And for me, it's what adds value to other people, because I didn't get here by being an island by myself. Funny enough, I lived on an island for 15 months, but I have a support system. I have people that push me. I have people that I call when my contractor pisses me off or a tenant doesn't pay rent. I've got like a crew of people that support me, and I make sure that I add as much value to them as they add value to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I as well. I mean, I've got all the unofficial mentors that I call, every time something goes wrong, every time this is such an emotional ride, right? One day or throughout the day, you're a genius, you're an idiot, you're going to be a millionaire, you're going to be bankrupt. Like, the emotional roller coaster that we just, I mean, 80 times a day, from like sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
So it's, I often still have to get talked off the ledge, and very much appreciate those people. And I try and similar, I try and give it back as much as I can, with the podcast. And we have a meetup tonight. And that's what you're doing is so important, because, we talked about this before we started recording, is like, 99% of this is the mindset, right? I was talking to somebody right before, like I literally hung up with them at 12:59 to get on this call with you. And what we were talking about was like, I'm not good at anything. Like if I think back on like my, natural skill sets, like I'm a slow reader. I can't type. I suck at Excel. Like I can't really concentrate. All of my success is predicated to like the continual development, like personal development that allows me to just keep up and try, like every day, like fail every day. And then we'll get up the next morning, like keep doing it and just not quit. It's like the Forrest Gump syndrome. You just keep going,
Yeah.
So that's huge. And to get that, to keep going and to keep trying and to keep failing forward, you need the support of others. You mentioned, you said, what I find is people are lonely. And it's so true, especially in this, right? Because their parents are telling them they're crazy. Their friends are telling them they're crazy. Like, dude, you got a good job. Why don't you just go to it? And so when a lot of people are lonely, and they seek that, they need that comfort and encouragement to keep going forward and taking action. And, when they get rejected and they get 27 offers turned down, they need to make a 28th.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly where I was in 2020. I was living in a van, not down by the river,
Nice.
but by a waterfall, in New Zealand. And I had 17 offers rejected, or I should say 17 offers I wrote, one under contract. I think 4 of those terminated all of them because the sellers lied about this, or the renovations were bigger, etc. So 17 offers resulted in 0 closings. And I was really frustrated. I had felt like I had been kicked in the gut. And what's funny is I got asked later, now that I've had success, now that people don't think I'm crazy, they think I'm a genius. They say, "Oh, did you want to quit?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't even think about quitting. I cried a lot, but I didn't even think about quitting." Like, I am so determined and so certain, I should say, I'm so certain that I am going to build wealth from real estate investing, that quitting's not even on the table.
Yeah, for sure. What do you have to say for somebody who's just getting started? What piece of advice would you give to somebody who hasn't bought a single piece of real estate yet, and they're coming into this market, right? And it's like uber competitive, and everything's overpriced, and nothing cash flows. Like, what is your elevator pitch to that person?
Master the skill of analyzing deals. Master it. I don't care if you're bad at math or bad at school or bad at anything. I don't care. Anyone determined to invest in real estate needs to know how to use the basic spreadsheet and basic deal calculator. So master the skill of analyzing deals so that you don't buy a bad deal. And then you need to practice. And so there's not going to be 20 available viable deals out there right now. And so analyze deals that just closed, analyze the property next door to you, analyze the deal or the house that you live in, but analyze deals and master that skill is step 1.
What do you think makes a good deal?
It's going to totally depend on everybody's goals. So
like like with a rental property, how do you analyze a rental property and determine if it's going to cash flow, how much it needs to cash flow? What's your criteria?
Yep. So I'm really conservative. At least I think so. Someone is probably more conservative out there is going to hear these numbers, but I use 8% vacancy, and this is on a long-term buy and hold. Like let's say we're analyzing a duplex, and I use 8% vacancy, 5% capex, 5% maintenance, and then I usually do 10% property management, even if I'm going to self-manage, because eventually, like you, I want to hand off that piece. So those are my numbers that I'm using. And then the pieces of information that I need to analyze a deal, because I get asked that often, is I need to know what's the price that I need to offer to win the deal. It doesn't matter nowadays what it's listed for. We need to know, what is it going to take this deal down? How am I going to finance it? How much renovation is there? What is potential rent? And that's potential rent. I don't care about current rent. I'm not buying the deal as it is today. I'm buying the deal as how amazing am I going to make it cash flow 6 months from now, a year from now. And then I need property taxes and estimated insurance. And if I have, and landlord paid utilities, if I have those pieces of information, I can analyze any deal.
And what's the end result? What is a thumbs up? Like how many, once you subtract your 28% off the top and then your taxes and insurance and mortgage off the bottom, what do you need left over?
If I'm doing a long-term buy and hold, I want it to at least be 11% cash on cash. Typically though, Sterling, I'm buying like 16% cash on cash as a long-term. But if I'm doing the medium-term rental strategy where I'm furnishing it and I'm renting it out to traveling nurses, I want 18 to 38% cash on cash. And I'm getting those deals even today.
So you're putting, I burr everything. So I hadn't put a down payment down in years. So nice. I don't calculate cash on cash because it's always infinite. When you're putting down payments down, how do you not run out of money?
You have to start using equity partners, and you have to burr every once in a while.
Okay.
Otherwise, you do run out of money. You absolutely run out of money.
That was the lesson I learned after I bought my second house. I'm like, well, that was great, but now it's taking me a year to save up another down payment.
Yep.
So when you say equity partners, what does your equity partnerships look like, and how does that affect this cash on cash number? Right. So like, I mean, if you have an equity partner and they're covering,
for me it's infinite. For them, it's less.
Okay. So that's my question is, like, once you pay the equity partner, for you it's infinite. What are you looking to get per door? I guess, like, I'm thinking like $100 a door after you pay your equity partner his interest and or her or whatever, and then all this. What are you left with? What's coming into you?
So I'm doing equity partnerships on these medium-term rentals. So the reason why being an equity partner with me is attractive to my investors is I'm putting in the hustle of furnishing it. I happen to own a company, Aria Design, that furnishes rentals for investors. So I'm furnishing the unit. I'm also managing the unit. And then I'm maximizing cash flow by renting it out to traveling nurses. And so what I'm looking for is I want at least $500 of cash flow per door. I'm typically getting a little bit closer to 600, 700 a door. And then, of course, I'm splitting part of that with my equity partner.
Okay. I got you. And that is in today's current environment where you're managing it.
Correct.
Okay. So you are holding on to about $250 a door
per door.
Cool. And how have your rentals been from an occupancy perspective? Have you ever had challenges? Because it sounds like a lot of times, when you buy it, your intention is to raise the rent. Have you ever underwrote things? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, we all want to raise the rent, and a lot of times we create better value, right, and make it nicer and that kind of thing. So, like, have you ever had trouble achieving the pro forma rents? Like, oh man, I'm gonna get this thing fixed up. It's gonna be rented out for $1,800 a month, and then like you go to market and you're getting 16. Has that
Yeah,
ever
great
happened?
question. I tend to be so conservative. So I'll give you two examples. So I bought this fourplex in Omaha, and I thought I would rent out the units long term at $800 and medium term for $1,300. I just got a tenant that moved in 5 days ago, paying $1,775.
Nice.
Here's the best part. He moved in on April 1st. My tenant before him that was there for 6 months, also a traveling nurse, was moved out on the 30th first at 10 a.m. My cleaner has asked that I stop having people move out at 10 and someone move in at 3. She wants a full day, which I agree. There are some little things that need to be worked on. And so, yeah, someone moves out at the end of the month and someone moves in. They don't always end up being the end of the month. Traveling nurses sometimes leave on the 12th or the 18th. But typically I have one night of vacancy. I have 5 furnished rentals in Omaha, Nebraska right now, and I have had 9 days of vacancy since I closed on it in May of 2021 across all 5 units.
How are you sourcing these traveling nurses?
Furnishfinder.com.
Furnishedfinder.com.
I need to buy that website.
Yeah. Especially now because all of the listeners of the Rent Roll Radio Show are going to go download it, which is tons. What would you have done differently if you knew everything you did today, if you started over today?
I wouldn't have spent so much time second guessing myself. I am a person of action. And so I like the coaching client from last night. Her name is Amanda. Congratulations, Amanda. She's scared and she took action. And I'm really happy to say I did the same thing. I was scared and I took action. But if I could go back, my blood pressure probably would have been a little more sane if I just didn't worry as much.
I always tell people I get just as scared as you. There's something wrong with me. I don't get scared until after I jump. I buy it and then I start to freak out. Like I don't freak out before I buy it.
That happened to me when I was 19. I bought a one-way ticket from Chicago to Dublin. And it wasn't until I got on the plane that I realized I've never gone abroad before. But I go into things, I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. I've done this before. And I've stood on the edge of a platform to bungee jump. I'm like, oh yeah, I've done this before. And then you look over the edge, you're like, you've never done this before. What are you doing? But yeah, confidence is not my issue.
Right. So real quick, I want to hop over to our radio round. I just got 3 quick questions. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
Oh, great question. Right now, it is the book that I'm reading needs
That's
a shout
always
out.
the case.
It's so good. I read a lot, I should say, but this is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. It has been recommended so many times. And if you're an audiobook fan, you have to do the Audible version because it's him and his ghostwriter. They do little commentary that you wouldn't get if you read the book. And it's blowing my mind. It's so good.
Yeah, David Goggins is good stuff. What is your favorite quote?
It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Nice. I like it.
Sorry, mom and dad.
And then, what's your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Can I say travel? Definitely travel.
Yeah. Nice.
I'm always traveling.
And what do you do when you're traveling all the time? And do you travel by yourself?
I travel alone a lot. This year has been really cool. I traveled to Guatemala earlier this year with a bunch of real estate investors. Then a bunch of real estate agents joined us. Then I flew from there to Merida, Mexico with a bunch of people that I met at FinCon. So they're all in the FI, financially independent movement. Sure. Sterling, I got there. I'm the oldest person there. And these 20 somethings are all financially independent. And I'm like, God, I found it. Like, these are my people. And so I'm really excited that now I'm actually going back to Guatemala in June, and I'm bringing 13 investors with me for a real estate retreat in Guatemala.
That's awesome. Yeah. How can our listeners find out more about you, get in touch with you, invest with you, get your coaching program, go to Guatemala?
Absolutely. Let's travel the world together, you guys. So you can find me at sarahdweaver.com. I'm also Sarah D. Weaver on Instagram. And I love hearing from people. So if you're listening to this podcast and there's something that I said that you thought heck yes or heck no, I'd love to hear it.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for joining the show. I had a ton of fun. I know our listeners are going to love it. And I'm sure plenty of them will reach out to you. Thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to keeping up with you in your journey.
Thanks, Sterling.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rent Roll Radio Show brought to you by Crestworth Capital. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating and review. You can also visit us at crestworthcapital.com or rentrollradio.com, or follow us on Facebook at Rent Roll Radio or at Crestworth Capital. If you would like to reach us, feel free to shoot us an email at info@rentrollradio.com or sterling@crestworthcapital.com. We hope you come back next week to join us on some more of our journey. Until then, happy investing.